Howdy again everyone, and I have another new Nikon lens here for your consideration, the Nikon Z MC 50mm f2.8. This is a true macro lens with 1:1 magnification, but a wider angle than usual of 50mm. Most macro lenses are in the 100mm or thereabouts area. The disadvantage of that wider angle is that you have to get very close to your subject for macro photography, but the advantage is that it's easier to get handheld shots without blurriness at that wider angle, and also 50mm is still very useful for general purpose photography, so it is a handy lens to have around with you. Its price is £650 here in the UK, or $650 US, which is very expensive for a 50mm lens, especially an f2.8 one. Let's hope that the quality is there. I'd like to thank Nikon UK for loaning me this lens for a couple of weeks for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent video. Let's start with the build quality. This lens is made of plastic, and at 260 grams or just over half a pound, it doesn't feel heavy at all. It's based on a metal lens mount with a weather sealing gasket around the edge. On the side there are some simple focus control switches, including a focus limiter. Then comes the rubberized focus ring. It turns very smoothly and it works very slowly with the focus motor. That makes perfect sense if you're trying to do precision macro photography, but it can be a bit annoying at normal distances, having to keep turning it for ages. The front of the lens extends as you focus more closely, revealing a macro ratio indicator. As you can see here, the lens does suffer from some focus breathing, zooming in as you focus more closely to your subject. This is completely normal for a macro lens. I'm not sure if I've ever seen one that doesn't do this. The autofocus motor works just averagely quickly, and it makes a quiet whirring sound as it does so, but it is very accurate. The lens comes with one of these very dinky little hoods, which won't really help all that much. It has a front filter size of 46mm, and it does not feature image stabilization, although most new Nikon cameras do have it built in nowadays. Overall, the build quality is fine. It feels solid enough and it just works really, although the focus system isn't the quickest in the world. Now onto image quality. I'm testing the lens on a full frame camera, my 45MP Nikon Z7, and in-camera corrections are turned on for these tests. At f2.8, the lens's sharpness is excellent in the middle of the image with biting contrast. Over in the corners, the lens continues to show excellent sharpness, although contrast is a bit lower, showing just a touch of ghosting on contrasting edges. Stop down to f4 and the corner contrast becomes excellent, and back in the middle the lens is even a touch sharper than before, looking absolutely perfect. The lens stays this sharp down to f11. f16 and f22 get softer due to the effect of diffraction. But overall, it is a brilliant performance from this little lens, offering virtually perfect image quality almost straight from f2.8. Very nice, that'll be useful for your photography at normal distances. Now, as it's a macro lens, let's get straight into image quality at close distances. At the maximum aperture of f2.8, which the camera reports as the equivalent of f5.6 due to the close distance, well, the image quality continues to be essentially perfect. Stop down to f8 and the image begins to soften already due to the effect of diffraction. Here is f11 and f16. So, diffraction begins to soften the image quite quickly due to the lens's wider angle than usual for a macro optic, but still, that's as good a performance as you can realistically hope for. Now, let's take a look at distortion and vignetting. These images were taken with in-camera corrections turned off. You can see the lens is projecting a touch of pincushion distortion here, and the corners are certainly quite dark at f2.8. That vignetting is reduced at f4 and f5.6, but it never completely disappears no matter how far you stop down, so just an average performance here. When faced with bright lights in your picture, the lens performs fairly well. There's not much flaring here and contrast remains nice and high. Let's take a look at its bokeh. That maximum aperture of f2.8 isn't exactly going to blow your backgrounds to smithereens at normal distances, but at close distances we see some lovely soft bokeh in your images. And related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. Nikon have done a great job here. It normally plagues macro lenses, but here we can see that even at f2.8 we have almost no colourful highlighting in the foreground or background. Overall, this is an absolutely excellent 50mm macro lens from Nikon, brilliantly sharp with lovely colours and contrast and no image quality issues at all. I'm getting more and more fun out of these wider angle macro lenses whenever they come into my office for testing. They really are very enjoyable to use. Is it worth £650? I'm not quite sure about that. Maybe if it had an aperture as bright as f2 it might be, so it's not great value for money, but it is a superb lens overall, and so it does come recommended. Here are some more sample pictures from the lens while I tell you about the fun that I've been having on Patreon recently. For anyone who wants to support the channel on Patreon, for only $3 a month, you get all kinds of videos that are exclusive to supporters for 2 years, as well as extra weekly pictures and advanced previews of videos and equipment that I'm testing. It's fun. So if you'd like to support this channel and get some extra content, there's a link in the description below. Ciao!